It's July 19th, and we need to be very careful about how we position ourselves this weekend, whether we go short or long. I'm Miguel Vasquez, and as you can hear, my voice isn't in great shape today. I just got back from a few days of vacation, and the first thing that happened was I caught a cold. I'm gonna try to do my best. Let's make a forecast for Bitcoin's price movement for, the start of this week. Let's take a look at where it stands in the long term and the best moments to enter for intraday or scalping trades. As you know, on this channel, we don't focus on any particular indicator. What we're looking for are the strategies or manipulations that the big players are constantly making on all the charts. We're on the 4 hour chart because that's our home base, but we can track these manipulations or strategies by the big players or institutions across all time frames. In my course, I explain how to spot these Wyckoff movements, which are accumulation, markdown, and distribution. But in general, what we need to do is always see which phase we're in, look for these price actions that give us clues to find the best entry points, and with volume, we can see exactly what the big players are doing. So, without further ado, let's start today's analysis, July 19th. We start, like another days, by placing a candle that represents 1 week. And here, just so you can see it clearly, the area we're in is an accumulation in Wyckoff. We've moved not only from the lower half of the channel, but now it's fighting to gain strength within the upper half. You see the selling climax? There are elements that tell us that in the long term, yes. Now we're going to see the price much higher than where we are now. The previous distribution was very low, around the 80,000 zone, and it practically didn't last at all, just 2 weeks, when normally it should last at least 2 months. That's why, in the long term, we're probably going to see a distribution near 90,000, then lasting at least 2 months, which is what we've typically seen with Bitcoin. Now, let's head to our headquarters and set up supports and resistances, which, as you know, are those elements through which the price of Bitcoin, or any asset really, since we're currently studying Bitcoin, but you can use this strategy with any asset, always moves. What we have is the 60,000 zone is support below, and the 68,000 zone is resistance above. Also, pay attention to the mid-channel zone. It doesn't have as much significance as the two previously mentioned, but often when the price reaches that area, it starts making certain moves, and you need to study it very carefully with the volume. Do you see how we spotted this entry? In the accumulation zone I mentioned for the long term, now on the 4 hour chart, we see it the same way. From 68,000 to 60,000, from 60,000 to nearly 68,000, it stopped at 67,255, then dropped again to 60,000, and now it's, so to speak, making a move towards 68,000. However, in the mid-channel zone, you can see it's trying to regain that strength. Little by little, it has had three dips to regain strength, and each of these three has been higher than the previous one. That tells us it's already getting ready to enter that 64 to 68 phase. We also saw, as I told you, that once it enters the 68 zone, we were going to see retests in the upper area. And that's exactly what we saw. You see this retest? Then it dropped to gain strength, and now we're going for the second retest with a lower high than the previous one. That is, we'll see. Today is Sunday, and you already know that Bitcoin's price always moves sideways or does some weird things on the weekend. It works a bit differently than it does during the week. But we'll see the price, even though it's the weekend, at least touch 64,000 and then react. It could drop to gain a bit more strength. But as for next week, we're expecting it in this area between 60 and 64. We always confirm with volume because you know that price action, which is support, resistance, and the shapes of Japanese candlesticks, only gives us an intuition of what Bitcoin might do. To make sure that intuition is accurate, you always have to look for those strong hand strategies with volume. All right, we have the volume, and when the weekend comes, the volume practically disappears. This Sunday, it picked up a bit at night with that move aiming for the upper area of 64,800, but it's practically non existent. I mentioned at the beginning of the video, and that's how I titled it, that you should be careful with this lack of volume because what could happen is that you end up in a situation and let's say, bad one, for example, going long, and then a position from a fund or someone very important appears, someone not related to the strong hands, but who was putting a significant amount into Bitcoin, and we see a wick. Be careful with your stop loss in this case, because that wick is going to recover and return to the same area, but it might knock you out of the game. Be very careful with those wicks and keep in mind that the wick won't last. In other words, imagine it drops from 64,800 to around 62,000. It's going to go back to the 64,000 zone again. It's not going to stay there because it doesn't have enough strength. You always have to keep that in mind over the weekend. Like I was saying about the big players disappearing, and then tonight, Sunday night, the week starts again. Not Monday morning, but Sunday night, Spanish time, and we'll see how the price starts moving again. Volume, we'll start to see volume spikes above 1.5 and a more natural movement, more in line with what we've been studying throughout this week. I also wanted to tell you that if what you like is scalping or intraday trading, those same indicators, Japanese candlesticks, wicks, volume, price reaching certain levels, supports or resistances, apply to any time frame. We've seen it on the long term, like 4-hour charts, but you can also see it on 15 or 30-minute charts. And enter for scalping or intraday trades. On my VIP Telegram channel, I give you the two trades I make every day, which are scalping trades. Sometimes they go a little further, but usually it's scalping or intraday. I share them with you, the asset, which is Bitcoin, the time I enter, and then I tell you the golden point, as I call it, which is the area we're watching, as well as the area where I exit. All right, for example, what we can look for now in today's Sunday scalping or intraday session is it's 10:30 in the morning, and what we're looking for is a clear entry with volume, as we're seeing here, which is pushing the price down a bit. That starts to give us the first indications. We need to confirm a bit more as the day goes on, but it will probably come back to touch the 64 zone again before entering the dynamics of the week. All right, I also wanted to wish good luck, of course, to Spain. We'll be supporting the match tonight. In any case, it's going to be a great match, and we'll all enjoy it a lot. Now I'll show you the July challenge, which, as you know, yesterday I was traveling on vacation. I'm not sure how these vacations will end, but anyway, I'll show you the challenge I did on Friday. As you can see in the challenge, I started on July 1st with $500 and each day with entries of $15 or $20. Now, I'll start with $25 because the account is getting really big and it's just to show you that simply by entering or with my Bit Telegram entries or simply by going with the flow, when you see a movement that's already obvious, not like now when I told you the movement is about to start, but when you actually see it has already started, you get in, grab those $15, $20, $25 once a day, and that's it, you're done. I started on the first, well, you saw the TPI, I showed you that mexday.com sent me, and now the account is at 833 with just one entry a day, and without making things complicated. That is, I already have a profit of $333. Whatever profit I have at the end of the month this July, I'll raffle it among everyone who signs up at mexday.com and makes their first deposit. In other words, MexStat gives you a lot of advantages, like $50 with your first deposit. People who are part of the daily analysis community also get a lot of rewards, and I'll be raffling among you as well. That extra amount, which we hope will be close to $400 to $500 this month. I'm Miguel Vasquez. This is Daily Bitcoin Analysis. I really appreciate you watching this video. And as I always say, this is not financial advice. I'm just sharing my experience with you after more than 15 years in professional trading. See you tomorrow. Hopefully my voice will be better and we'll see how the game went. See ya.